who are of high learning, who are educated, or come out of seminary. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying God can't use somebody out of seminary, but we've made that the standard, and those are the people we are going to believe. And because of that, we don't have weapons anymore, and what things we do have has become so dull that they're not good for anything. The church is in the same state that Israel was in. The Philistines had them right where they want them. And listen what they said. They didn't even have a sword or a spear. But it does say this. So it came to pass in the day of battle. And I'm going to tell you something, church. We're in the day of battle. And it came to pass in the day of battle, there was neither sword nor spear found in the hand of any of the people that were with Saul and Jonathan. In the church, there are not too many that have a sword or a spear, that have a weapon that will fight against the things of the world and the things of the flesh and the things of the devil. But there is a few. Listen, it said with Saul and Jonathan, there was. So there is a few that still have a sword. There's still a few that got it. There's still a few that got us equipped to fight. And it said here, there was none found in the hand of any of the people that were with Saul and Jonathan, but with Saul and with Jonathan his son was there found. And the garrison of the Philistines went out and camped at the passage of Michmash. Listen, in the church today, there are very few that got a sword. There are very few that got a spear. There are very few that know how to stand up and fight. But there still are a few. But listen, most of the church doesn't have that. And the Philistines are out there on the hill, and the church is worried, and the church is scared. And so what does the church do? They begin to listen to what the Philistines have to say. They begin to get their tools from the Philistines. They begin to get their understanding and their knowledge and what they think is the Word of God from the Philistines. And that's what the church has done. That's where the church is today. But here's what I want you to get. There are still a few. There are still a few that have a weapon. And I want you to get a good look at what can happen when a few decide, just like I read back to you in there in Nehemiah, it's time to rise up. We're going to go on into chapter 14 of 1 Samuel. Beginning at verse 1. Now it came to pass upon a day that Jonathan, the son of Saul, and remember, he had a weapon, said unto the young man that bare his armor, Come, let us go over to the Philistines' garrison that is on the other side. But he told not his father. Jump down to verse 4. And between the passages by which Jonathan sought to go over unto the Philistine garrison, there was a sharp rock on the one side, and a sharp rock on the other side. And the name of the one was Bozez, and the name of the other Sina. The forefront of the one was situated northward over against Michmash, and the other southward over against Gibeah. And Jonathan said to the young man that bare his armor, Come, and let us go over unto the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that the Lord will work for us. For there is no restraint to the Lord to save by many or by few. I want to stop there a minute and make a couple points. Listen, Jonathan made up his mind. Remember, Jonathan had a weapon. And let's bring that down to the church and the spiritual thing. There are still a few that got it, that understand what God will do, that understand who God is, that understand with God how we can fight any enemy, that understand with God. It don't matter what the numbers look like. There are still a few. And that's who Jonathan was. And he made up his mind. He rose up, as Nehemiah said, I'm going to go fight. And he was going to go out and fight these Philistines. But listen, the way wasn't easy. It said that the path that he had to go through, there was a sharp rock on the one side, and there was a sharp rock on the other side. We're going to get into a little more of the path that he had to take, but I want you to get this. First thing you need to realize, it ain't an easy road. You can't get off the way that God says to go because there's a sharp rock on one side and there's a sharp rock on the other side. If you don't walk it just like God said to walk it, you're going to fall on the sharp rocks. And unfortunately, that's what's happened to many of us. That's what happened to a lot of people in the church. They didn't walk it the way that God said to walk it. They began to look with their natural eyes. Listen, here is Jonathan and his armor bearer, and it says he was a young man. He must not have been a very old one, because it made a point of saying he was a young man. He probably hadn't been in this thing too long. But that don't matter. He trusted and he believed. And that's what is necessary. But listen, he said, there's a garrison of Philistines out there. But listen what else he said. Perhaps God I'm going to trust God. And I'm going to go. But listen, he had to go on that path. He couldn't get off of that path. He had to do it the way that God said to do it. And Jonathan said to the young man that bare his armor, come, let us go over unto the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that God will work for us. For there is no restraint to the Lord to save by many or by few. It doesn't matter who's with you. It doesn't matter who's not with you, because God is with you. He don't need a church with 5,000 members. He don't need a church with a $100,000 bank account. He don't need any of that. He needs a people that are willing to take up the sword and are willing to go forth and are willing to trust Him to deliver. Not to count on themselves, not to count on their numbers, not to count on their popularity or anything else, but to trust God and to go forth. And God is not restrained by anything. When He has a soul that is willing and He has a soul that trusts Him and believes Him and have confidence in Him, He will. He is able. And again, I want you to keep thinking about this. Those Philistines are whatever you're going through. Whatever your problem is. That's no more difficult for God than the actual Philistines were. But you've got to have somebody who will rise up. You've got to have somebody who will fight. Like Nehemiah said, I looked. Are you looking? You see what's going on? Do you see what's happening just in our little group? Look how many are not here. Look how many are being battled against. Look how many are being oppressed. Look how many are going through things. Look at the stuff that is happening just in this little group. Like God said to Nehemiah, look. Look. See what's going on and rise up. Refuse to take it anymore. Say to the people, listen, God got me up. God made me look. And God told me to say to this people, don't be afraid. Don't be worried. Don't be beat down. Don't be distressed. Don't get anxiety. Don't let it steal your joy. Don't let it steal your confidence. Don't let it steal your faith. But remember your God and fight. Fight for yourselves first. And once you fight for yourselves and you're victorious, then you can fight for your loved one, your families, everything else that matters to you. But you've got to rise up and fight for yourself first. Listen, Satan knows. When your mind is so bogged down with that problem, you're not going to help anybody. You're not going to do anything for anybody. You are so consumed with that. You got the Philistines on the hill, and they got you shaking in your shoes. You don't think Satan knows that? And if you don't fight back, he's going to keep coming up and keep punching you in the nose. It's time to rise up and to fight back. It's time to be like Jonathan, to stand up and say to anyone that will go with you, come on, let's go take it on. Because my God is able. And again, you know this, but I got to say it. This is where you fight.
Amen.
This is where you fight. Sure. Listen, that's not a 5-minute, oh, God fix everything and get up and go on your way. Listen, I talked about this before, and God brought it back to my memory, so I'm going to talk about it again. When was the last time you fasted? Spiritually speaking, in sackcloth and ashes. I'm not telling you go home, burn some wood, and make a pile of ashes and get in it and put on some sackcloth. But spiritually, that's where we need to get. That's where we really begin to fight. We need to cry out to God. We need to get on our faces before God. We need to just pour it out to God in spiritual sackcloth and ashes. That's where we fight. That's where you begin. That was the beginning of Jonathan's journey. First you got to say, I'm gonna. And then you got to get up and do something. And what is it that we do? We can't actually go out there and see a physical enemy that we can take on. We battle not with flesh and blood, but against principalities and power. And then we do that here.
That's right.
And that's where it's got to start. And listen, I know there are many of us. I've been guilty of it. You've probably been guilty of it. At the moment when the message comes, or when God speaks to me, or it pricks my heart, I do that. Maybe once, maybe twice, maybe for 2 days, maybe for a week. But it begins to wear off. And when it begins to wear off, Satan begins to creep back in.
That's right.
You can't stop.
That's right.
And listen, God ain't going to say to you every day, hey, it's time. You got to want it.
Right.
You got to do it.
Amen.
You got to make that choice. You got to make that decision. And whether this sounds good to you or don't sound good to you, sometimes you got to make yourself do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a Christian. I shouldn't have to make myself. Your flesh, you do have to make yourself.
That's right.
Listen, Jonathan said to his armor bearer, come on, we're going to go. And he had to take that narrow path. That narrow path to your victory is here.
Mm-hmm.
It's here. And it ain't easy. You've heard, maybe you said, or I know you know, of people talking about praying until you pray through. That ain't easy. How many times have you got down to pray? And the phone rings, or you get down to pray and something else pops on your mind, or you get down to pray and your mind begins to wander. It ain't easy.
That's right.
To focus a fleshly mind on the things of God. It's a struggle. You got to fight it.
That's right.
And when you begin to drift off, you got to pull yourself back. You got to make yourself do it. And Christians need to understand that. It ain't about getting down and saying some memorized rote prayer. It ain't about getting down and reciting the Lord's Prayer or something somebody else wrote or anything like that. You got to cry unto God from the depths of your heart.
That's right.
From the very core of who you are, from down in here where it hurts, you got to cry out to God. And it ain't easy to get there because this flesh will fight you. This body will fight you. This mind will fight you. Satan will fight you. It ain't easy. That's that narrow path.
Yes.
He goes on, and his armor bearer said unto him, do all that is in thine heart. Turn thee, behold, I am with thee, according to thy heart. Listen, I know I keep backing up. I got to keep putting all this together. As Hezekiah said to the people, hey, it's time to rise up and to fight. Hezekiah got it first, but then he had to get it to the people. Jonathan got it first, but then he had to get it to somebody. And I'm asking you, God has given it to me. It's time to rise up and fight. Who wants to go along? Who will go with me? Who will be willing to stand? Can you answer like his armor bearer answered? Do whatever's in your heart. I'm with you. I'll go with you. I will fight. We as a body need to make that determination. We as a church need to make that determination that we are going to fight. Because unless we do that, we are never going to get the total victory.
Amen.
Listen, God doesn't just want one or two to get the victory. He wants all his children. He wants the whole church to have the victory.
Amen.
His armor bearer said unto him, do all that is in thine heart. Turn thee, behold, I am with thee according to thy heart. Then said Jonathan, behold, we will pass over unto these men, and we will discover ourselves to them. If they say thus unto us, tarry until we come to you, then we will stand still in our place, and will not go up unto them. But if they say thus, come up unto us, then we will go up, for the Lord hath delivered them into our hand, and this shall be a sign unto us. Listen, just real quickly, and then I'm going to keep moving on. Jonathan said we're going to go over, and this is what we're going to do. And then we're going to wait for a sign. Listen, we need to begin to cry out to God. We need to make that first step. We need to start walking the path, and we need to go. And then we get to a certain point, just as Jonathan did, we got to wait for direction from God. God will lead us. Our problem a lot of time is we want to fix it. We want to do it. I have an idea that'll make it all better. What he did was said to his armor bearer, when we get over there, we're going to wait for direction from God. When this happens, we'll know God said, move on. When this happens, we'll know what God would have us to do. We need to walk that path. We need to cry out to God. We need to fast and pray in sackcloth and ashes and wait for direction from God. I can get up here and pray and cry out and do all that and then get up and say, oh, now I know what I'll do. I have to do it the way God says to do it. It may not seem that can't work. It may seem like that's impossible. There ain't no way that. But if God says it, it'll work. If we follow it, that's what Jonathan and his armor bearer did. He said, we're going to go up, we're going to show ourselves to them, and that's what we need to do. We need to make a declaration to Satan or to your problem and to you issue. I'm here and I'm ready to fight. They said, we're going to go over and we're going to discover ourselves to them. That just means we're going to show them we're here and we're ready. And that's what we need to do. I'm tired of getting punched in the nose, and now I'm going to stand up. That's what we need to do. And then wait for direction from God. It goes on. And both of them discovered themselves under the garrison of the Philistines. And the Philistines said, behold, the Hebrews come forth out of the holes where they had hid themselves. I can just hear Satan, when some of God's people begin to stand up and fight, saying, oh, look, the little rats are coming out of the hole. That's what he's learned to expect from the children of God. We hide. We go in our little hole and we hide from him. And that he looks at us with disdain. He looks at us with contempt. And just like these Philistines said about them, oh look, they came out of their holes. And kind of put you down and make fun and stuff like that. It goes on, and the men of the garrison answered Jonathan and said, and his armor bearer and said, come up to us, and we will show you a thing. And Jonathan said unto his armor bearer, come up after me, for the Lord hath delivered them into the hand of Israel. This is a sign that Jonathan was waiting for. This is the direction of God. This is the voice of God. But I want you to get what the Philistines said. Because they've had their way for so long, and because they had Israel right where they wanted it. First they say, oh look, they're coming out of their holes. Ain't that cute? Or whatever. And then they said to them, why don't you come on over here? I'll show you a little something, something. And with God directing him and God leading him and God on his side, Jonathan could say, yeah, I'm going to show you a little something, something. That's what the devil does to you. That's what he's been doing to us.
That's right.
That's what he's done to the church. I can see it in the spiritual. He sits back and laughs. Look, the church is hiding. The church goes and just cramps up in a little ball and gets that doom and gloom thing going, and I got them exactly where I want them. If one of us just gets an inkling that we're going to rise up, then he says, oh, look, they think they're going to do something. I'll show them. But when we become like Jonathan, and he says, I'll show them, we can say, no, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you my God. That's where we need to get to. And I am telling you, this is straight from God. That problem, that situation, that circumstance, whatever you're going through, whatever you're dealing with, is no problem for God.
That's right.
Look what he did to these Philistines. He'll do it for you. He will do it for you. The problem is, and I've said these kind of things before, the problem is we go through stuff we don't need to go through because we have yet to get to that point with God. And we need to get to that point with God. And the men of the garrison answered Jonathan and his armor bearer and said, come up to us and we'll show you a thing. And Jonathan said unto his armor bearer, come up after me, for the Lord hath delivered them into the hand of it. Before he touched one of them, before he got near them, when they said, come on, he already knew he had won. Did you hear what he said? The Lord hath delivered them. God made you the same promise. God made you the same promise. I will be with you. I will walk with you. I will deliver you. God has made you the same promise. How many of us stand up in the face of our problem, our situation, our circumstance, our trouble, our trial? How many of us stand up in the face of it and say, God has given you to me. I will tread on you. I will walk over you. How many of us do that? Most of us, when the problem and the trial and the situation and and the circumstance come, well, we sit down and say, oh,